Okay, that's okay. I'm Stephanie Nakhleh, and I co-founded Boomtown almost 11 or about 11 months ago with a very talented photographer, Minesh Bacrania. Boomtown is an independent publication here in Los Alamos. Hey, Kyle. We focus on providing in-depth reporting on issues that matter most to our community, from housing and road safety to what's going on with our teens. If you click on that QR code, you can zoom in on it with your phone. It'll take you right to the Boomtown homepage. So before I start, I just want to give a little disclaimer that I'm talking about local news going back a couple of decades. So I will be talking about some stories that are upsetting to some people, possibly. So I just want to, that's kind of the nature of local news. So I just want to give everybody a heads up that some of the topics could be a little difficult. So having said that, I'd like to take you all back with me in time about 30 years ago to when I was just a cub reporter here in Los Alamos. Down DP Road stood a little newsroom where local stories unfolded every day. Stories that reflected the unique, sometimes strange character of our town. I'd like to kick things off by sharing a few headlines from those days. A man claiming to save Los Alamos from the Antichrist was detained by police Monday morning. House cat attack hospitalizes man. Rabid ringtail attacks people at Bandelier. Tensions involving promotions and safety are ripping out the heart of Los Alamos Fire Department. These are all stories from the Los Alamos Monitor from the mid-1990s when I worked there. 30 years ago, I roamed the streets of Los Alamos as a beat reporter covering business, schools, police, and grinding through endless nighttime meetings. I especially remember dreading the planning and zoning meetings. So long, so boring, but I can't get away from it. I am now a planning and zoning commissioner. Here are some more memorable stories I covered back in the day. Family tries to face Los Alamos winter in tent. And in case you can't read the writing, I pulled out one of the quotes. I'm going to just let you read that while I grab a drink. Great need for affordable housing here. The more things change, huh? Take a look at those population numbers I added for context, and you might notice something that could surprise you. The numbers have hardly changed from 1995 to today. There is a causal relationship between housing supply, population, and affordability, which I will be getting into more a little bit later. Now onto wildlife. There's always stuff happening in this town with wildlife, right? Coyote bites 3-year-old. Coyote attacks 16-month-old. Police report another coyote incident, this time a 9-year-old girl bitten on the leg by a coyote. Each day at work brought something unexpected and sometimes tragic. You got it? Okay. Teens barely surviving a terrible car wreck. A 5-month-old baby suffering multiple broken bones as she was literally pulled between fighting parents. A high school student dying of asthma after gym class. A murder-suicide at a bank. A guard shot and killed during a training exercise at Lanel. Every day, there were multiple Lanel stories in the Los Alamos Monitor. We had one reporter, Stephen Shankland, some of you might know that name, whose full-time job was just covering the lab. From stories about cool robots to stories about how dramatic reductions in the lab's budget could devastate the town, which happened. Imagine that, daily coverage about Lanel goings-on and how what happened there affected what happened here on this side of the bridge. You'll notice in this story, well, you can't see it very well, but it says, in an interview with the Monitor, Lanel director Sig Hecker said, wow, routine media access to the lab director. That does not happen anymore. Now I feel like I have to go through public affairs just to ask my husband what to bring home for dinner. So I want to pause here, actually missed a slide, and reflect on why transparency is so essential, not just for reporting, but for its potential to save lives. Journalism both offers transparency to the public and depends on it to uncover the truth. When I was a student at Los Alamos High School, I survived a crash that killed my best friend, Jennifer Fleming. It was New Year's Eve, 1988, and we were hit head-on by a drunk driver. Jennifer was just 16 years old. 2 other passengers and I were severely injured. The Los Alamos Monitor quickly and accurately covered every painful detail of that crash. Our names, even though we were juveniles, the name of the man who hit us, the trial, the sentencing. They published photos of the wrecked car, and they even reported the graphic details of our injuries. Seeing all that in the news was difficult, but I did not resent it. Not then, and not later. That coverage did something essential. It informed the community, sparked outrage, and led to real changes in our road safety laws. That level of transparency wasn't just about telling a sad story. It was about ensuring the public knew what had happened so they could push for reform. If that reporting hadn't been done, we'd have been stuck with rumor mongering instead of facts. And let me tell you, rumor mongering is way harder on families than facts. And it is far less likely to lead to reform. Today, however, it's not the same as 1988 or 1995. When a fatal crash happens now in Los Alamos, the details are often withheld, forcing journalists to wait weeks or even months for details. And then we have to file official requests. This delay needlessly keeps the community in the dark. And I believe it puts us in Los Alamos at risk. Without the truth, without the facts, how can we push for change? Back then, the community understood that journalism based on quick and accurate police reports when it comes to road safety, when it comes to public safety, wasn't ghoulish. Road safety is a matter of public health, and communicating about it is something we need to fight for today. And that leads me back to a story that shows how the media used to work pretty seamlessly with public officials to offer timely, accurate reporting on critical issues. In that series on coyote attacks, I mentioned the most serious incident involved the animal dragging a baby off a porch. The baby's mother was inside taking a phone call when she heard her baby screaming. She runs outside and she sees this coyote with her baby in its jaws. She screams and runs at the animal, which drops the boy and runs off. That baby ended up hospitalized with severe puncture wounds in his abdomen. Turns out, local residents had been feeding the wildlife, and this had habituated them to humans, making coyotes lose their natural fear of people and making toddlers look like another snack the neighborhood was offering up. Obviously, this threatened the safety of our community's children, and needless to say, it totally sucked for this poor coyote, too. One lesson we learned from covering this story is that sometimes The things you do for your own self-interest and gratification, like feeding the cute neighborhood wildlife, can turn around and literally bite you. Sometimes the collective good has got to come before narrow self-interest. Back then, we were getting quick and accurate information from public officials like Los Alamos Police Department and Game and Fish. We worked as a team with the public in mind. We all wanted to serve the public. We didn't hide from them as if anything sad or scary was classified information. When this federal agent tracked and killed the coyote, he didn't hide it. He got on the phone with me. He invited me and photographer John McHale to come look at the corpse so we could document it and reassure a by now very freaked out community that their children were safe again. Whenever I look back through my archives to make sure I haven't hallucinated all this, I really wonder, was Los Alamos just weirder back then? Or did we just have the resources to uncover all the weirdness? I suspect it's the latter. I think Los Alamos is still pretty weird. And stuff like wildlife going after kids is still happening. But now it's happening in the shadows, and it's swept under the rug. I didn't know it at the time, but I worked for the Monitor in an age when newsrooms thrived, fueled by relatively ample resources. We were not making a lot of money. Community support and sufficient staff. The Monitor at its heyday boasted a staff of almost 30 people, with half a dozen reporters delving full-time into every aspect of this community. If you look at the full front page from the day of that coyote attack, I want you to notice something. It's all original reporting with staff bylines. No press releases and no wire stories. That's representative of what local newsrooms were like back then. From daily police briefings, daily, I sat down with the police every weekday morning and got a briefing on what had happened over the last 24 hours. From daily police briefings to interviews with homeless families to providing real analysis of council decisions, our team at the Monitor had the funding and support to dig up the information the public needed, armed with police scanners, notebooks, tape recorders, and putting in 50-hour weeks. We were stewards of accountability and transparency. We were the chroniclers of this town's unique character. So what happened? The internet happened. Across the country, local newsrooms toppled as tech giants like Facebook and Google gobbled up the ad revenue. The Monitor wobbled for years, collapsing completely 4 years ago. Its heyday was right when I was lucky enough to be there, though. We just didn't know we were dancing on the deck of a sinking ship. Since 2005, 2,900 newspapers in the United States have vanished. By this year's end, we're on track to lose a third of all of them. In 2023 alone, local newspapers disappeared at a rate of 2.5 per week, leaving over half of counties in the United States with no access to real, dependable local news. It's like watching a library burn, one book at a time. But it's not just about the numbers. When local news dies, democracy suffers. Without in-depth coverage, communities turn into news deserts, where reliable information is scarce and conspiracy theories thrive. It might seem counterintuitive, but skeptical coverage of the government helps the government. It's good for that institution. Studies show that when no one is holding institutions accountable, people actually become more suspicious and less engaged. Unfortunately, many local newspapers in the U.S. that have nominally survived the cull have become what Colorado journalism advocate Chuck Plunkett calls ghost ships, existing in name only, wrapping ads around filler instead of doing real reporting. In that environment, hyper-partisanship flourishes and community trust vanishes. The second blow that happened is an explosion in litigation. Lawsuits against public entities drive them to hide information behind bureaucratic walls. It's like there's spiders curling up around an egg sac. What was once freely available now has to be pried loose. Los Alamos is not unique in this, but the urge to guard information, to protect reputations, often protects reputations more than the public's right to know. All is not lost, though. We have several outlets, gesturing at Maura, though none of us is as fully staffed as the Monitor was. 3 may seem like a lot for a community that used to get by with just one, but remember that the Monitor used to pay 30 people to do this work. Now it's like we're paddling in 3 little rowboats when it used to be one big battleship. Each outlet brings variety, but we're all stretched super thin. At Boomtown, with just one full-time journalist, it's impossible to cover everything that I think needs to be covered. We were just saying this before. I need 5 more of me, and if any of you is working on a cloning machine, like, hit me up. So while we may not have the funding we once did, local news is still alive here, and we're committed to ensuring that it continues to serve our community. Resources may be thin, but local news isn't dead yet. Not dead yet. Not on our watch. So here we are, reimagining what local news can be. We may not have that Monitor-sized, fully staffed newsroom, but at Boomtown, we are committed to keeping the local news alive. We're on Substack, which gives us a direct connection to you, bypassing corporate ownership. We can talk more in the questions afterward about how Substack works, but just know that by subscribing, you're not just getting news, you're supporting a community-driven effort to sustain local journalism. And you know what? If we believe that local journalism is truly essential to American democracy, perhaps it's time for the public to consider funding it like we mean it. We need a bold approach to preserve the Fourth Estate before our democratic ideals vanish along with it. At Boomtown, we see our work as a community project. We're creating a space for dialogue where people can get out of their silos, whether it's the lab silo or the county silo or the police silo or the school silo, and talk to each other. We cannot tackle our community's issues by only talking to the mirror. We're not trying to recreate the Monitor or compete with the other local media. Each outlet has its own style. Ours is about filling gaps, digging really deep, and bringing you the context and details that might otherwise go unnoticed. Our goal is not to duplicate coverage. It's to offer something unique. Unlike the early 1990s, when this town was concerned with lab budgets being cut, today's town is booming. You may have noticed that Lanel has been on a bit of a growth spurt. This is changing our town in ways we are just beginning to feel. We call our project Boomtown for this reason, not just because things go boom here, but a little bit because of that. In policy parlance, a boomtown is marked by high affluence, strong employment, housing shortages, and physical and regulatory barriers to growth. I'm looking at Sylvia. Sound familiar? A boom acts like a shock to the system. It brings tremendous opportunities, but it also brings pain. It's tempting to ignore or avoid these changes, but change is inevitable. In fact, change is the only constant we can count on. Nothing in life is ever truly static. Trying to preserve things in amber is doomed to fail, and the attempt often brings more pain than it helps. At Boomtown, we're here to examine what's changing around us with clear eyes. We dig deep into its roots, explore its impacts, and follow the ripple effects downstream. We believe that having a thoughtful, honest conversation about how our town is changing is essential. In the end, understanding how change shapes us and how we shape it is key to finding a way forward. For example, we've written about why the most vulnerable residents in this town suffer more as wealth floods in, how low-income residents live in conditions that threaten their safety and their well-being. This piece shows how some residents of federally subsidized housing on North Mesa are living with mold, pests, flooding, and other safety hazards without any protection from the county or the state. A more recent piece follows residents living in a local mobile home park who reached out to us with serious concerns about their living conditions and their access, with winter coming up, to fuel for heating and cooking. We dug and we found some concerning things. It's not just adults who are struggling. We found that teenagers are facing hidden burdens as well. You know, it's a cliche that being a teenager is hard, but it's really gotten a lot harder, and so is parenting. Teen mental health across this country is plummeting, and Los Alamos teens are not immune to that. In this piece, we delved into teen substance use in Los Alamos, uncovering some pretty troubling trends that often go unnoticed by the broader community. Issues involving our young people are not easy to discover or document. For example, how many of you knew that we've lost 3 teens in Los Alamos to suicide in 2024 alone?
How would we know? Because oftentimes nobody will say it's suicide.
Right. Yeah, we can talk about that in a little. And when it comes to the safety of our roads, we don't just report on the surface details. In this piece, we investigated the unsafe road conditions that are plaguing residents and commuters alike. And we were the first to report on details of both tragic crashes that we've had in 2024. That's important information that no one else had uncovered. This story with these amazing photos by Minesh, and if you do nothing else, just take a look at the photos in that story that Minesh took. They're amazing. This story was shared across the state, illustrating the widespread hunger for in-depth analytical journalism. We've also scrutinized the accolades this town receives, like in this story, where we skeptically analyzed how Los Alamos keeps ending up on the healthiest communities in America list. We dug into the metrics behind those claims, and we asked important questions, like, what do those rankings really mean, and who's left out of that picture? But with change also comes opportunity. Take our economic landscape, for instance. In our piece on Central Park Square manager Patrick Sullivan, we saw how that plaza is becoming a really vibrant hub for local businesses, from the Tub to Wolf and Mermaid, LA Cantina, Bozy, the bookstore, and now Encanto. Businesses are beginning to really thrive again. And Lanel's staff director, Francis Chadwick, described how the lab is investing in the local economy and the state economy in general, showing how growth can benefit everyone if it's managed thoughtfully. Growth and change can be daunting. It's natural to want to preserve things, but often what we think we're preserving, it's gone. Journalism's role is to help us see things as they are, so we can make informed decisions. Growth offers us a chance to rethink old, underutilized spaces, welcome new businesses and new neighbors, and build a more connected, vibrant, and sustainable community. So while we tackle the tough questions, we're truly excited about what's ahead. This is such a dynamic time for Los Alamos. Our tagline is Stories About a Changing Los Alamos, and we're really dedicated to exploring all angles of that change. So we're gathered here today at the League of Women Voters on a week when hopefully everybody's out there voting. It's the perfect time to talk about democracy. Oh, pin. Journalism is often called the fourth estate because its essential role is to equip voters with information they need to make informed choices. At Boomtown, we take that role seriously. Unfortunately, many people have become used to seeing press releases and mistaking them for articles. I'm just as guilty of that. I'll go to a friend and I'll be like, hey, did you see that article about the fire station? Well, it's not an article, it's a press release. Press releases are PR. They're crafted to deliver a specific message. They have a place, but they're not a substitute for genuine reporting. Real journalism digs deeper. It means asking the tough questions and providing analysis to discover what's beneath the surface. For example, in this piece, this is a profile of Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham's housing policy advisor, Daniel Werwath. He gave us an exclusive interview, and together we explored how state and local policy affects housing supply and affordability in a place like Los Alamos. We discussed about how issues like landlord hiring and recent car crashes all intersect. They're all part of a piece. You know, on the issue of housing, any politician can say they support affordability, and they definitely all say that. But that word can mean very different things to different people. A talking point in this town for 30 plus years is, there's no room for anyone new up here. That is not what you say when you're interested in affordability. Without additional housing supply, you simply cannot get to affordability. Affordable housing is dense housing. When we say we're out of land, picture this. You can allow 1 house per acre, 5 houses per acre, 20 houses per acre. We've got the land, but how are we using it? That question is a matter of policy. It's a choice. It is not an act of God. There are upsides and downsides to every policy, including housing policy. We need to be honest about those. We need to realize we are making choices, and those choices do have consequences. Land use policy is not partisan. It may be the last thing left on the planet that's not partisan, but it is political. If we just accept a politician's statements on this issue or any issue, it's like a press release. We'll miss the bigger picture. We should ask whether a politician's actions match their words, and we should explore what their preferred policies actually mean for our community. We can also ask our leaders how they plan to protect vulnerable residents, like our homeless population, which does exist, or those in Elk Ridge or Mountain Vista. Do we need to hire a few social workers? Do we need a local rental housing code with tenant protections? Other towns have that. Los Alamos does not. On road safety, this is an issue that clearly resonates with our readers. These stories, we get so many more hits on them than any other kind of story. Voters can ask what is being done to keep our people safe. What are the metrics? How many crashes per population are we seeing? Who's accountable for getting those numbers down? No, seriously, who? Safety always seems to be everyone's top priority, but it never seems to be anyone's actual job. And for our teenagers who face unique pressures in a town like Los Alamos, we need to look beyond the comforting notion that Los Alamos is the happiest and healthiest town in America. We need to listen to what our kids are desperately trying to tell us. Their voices are at least as important as whatever U.S. News and World Report is saying, right? It's our responsibility to truly hear them and to take action to provide them the resources they need. Every single person in this town I have interviewed on this issue, from schools to police to the kids themselves to parents, they tell me we don't have enough resources in this town for our struggling young people. And that's crazy. That is totally unconscionable in a town as affluent as this one. Are we doing enough? Are we holding our leaders accountable? And just as importantly, are we holding ourselves accountable? I think the media can do a better job of informing the people of Los Alamos about what's really going on. That part is on us. And if you, as a community, value the work any particular journalist is doing, please let us know. Support us. Quality local journalism cannot survive without community support, and then we're all in the dark. Then there's the part that's up to local officials. I believe police, schools, and the county can and should do a great deal more to provide timely, accurate information about significant events in this town, whether it's car crashes, the drug overdose rate, domestic violence, and this alarming rise in teen suicide. And finally, there's the part that's up to the voters. As local citizens, we can push for leaders who really value transparency and accountability not as buzzwords, but as real guides for their actions. We should be honestly identifying our problems, set goals with specific metrics, and hold someone accountable if those goals are not met. We can all advocate for a Los Alamos where information flows freely, leaders are accountable, and our collective good is prioritized. That's not just an informed community. That's a community that's strong and resilient. That's a community that cares for its most vulnerable. That's a community that has truly earned labels like the healthiest and happiest town in America. So as we ponder the unique character of Los Alamos, a place where coyotes consider toddlers part of the food pyramid and self-proclaimed high priests set up shrines made of animal parts to ward off time-traveling antichrists, we can take comfort in one thing. This town knows how to handle the unexpected. This town knows how to take on a challenge. You know, if we could beat the Nazis to the world's first nuclear weapon, we can probably figure out how to make our roads a little safer and house a few people a little closer to work. I believe we have it within us to face our challenges honestly, work together, and make this town not just a place with a remarkable past, but one with a vibrant future. With that, thank you, and I'll take questions. If anybody wants to know more about Substack, we do that. But.
Oh, I was in a rush to get out. And make sure we knew. I will bring it to you back. No,
Joe.
So, where do you think the connection point comes? Because we are the home to the biggest employer in this region for sure. What is the first step? I mean, because I devour your articles. I make my living off of trying to get balance up here from a development standpoint. What is the first step? Because it truly is an us and them town up here, even though we don't like to think that. What's the first article you'd love to do that you haven't been able to do?
Oh, that's a great question.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes.
Oh,
What is?
she? Go ahead.
What is the first article she'd like to do if she had no restrictions?
I had to. What's a little slightly different? Geez, that's a really good question. I don't know. What do you want to see?
I think we have to accept that. I don't know if you saw the articles that came out in the New York Times on Sunday about this town.
Yes.
And I think we have to accept that we are so misunderstood as a community, and we have basically taken our biggest employer and watched it double in size in 5 years or less in a community that is incredibly small for that kind of growth.
Yeah.
And so think it's how do we change the story?
Mhm.
We're never going to change the nuclear story. That it is what it is. Who cares?
Mhm.
It's that other story that's up here, and I think it would be interesting because we're going to have to leave the region. You look at our region as Santa Fe, Rio Arriba County,
Mhm.
Los Alamos County, but we're the ones driving the bus. So
Mhm.
how do we leave this bus? Because we have to leave it. It's certainly not going to come out of Santa Fe.
Mhm.
Certainly not going to come out of Rio Arriba. How do we leave it?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I do think the siloing and bureaucracy are huge twin problems, right? And that's kind of vague, so it's hard to turn that into like a single story. But I think that that protective shell I was talking about, that is one of our biggest challenges up here.
I agree. I think that we are a region of tribes,
Mm-hmm.
not all Native American.
No, I know what you meant.
Entity
Yeah.
is a tribe. And I think the first aha moment, and I would think someone like you, the two of you could start to address this, is there are values in tribes, but right now the list is far shorter on the value and far longer on what it's costing all of us as a region to stay in this tribe. So transitioning from competition to collaboration,
Mm-hmm.
transitioning from secrets to transparency.
Mm-hmm.
There will always be secrets, but what can we pull from?
Mm-hmm.
Because reading, if you haven't read the article out of the New York Times, I strongly recommend it because it was a moment of reading about yourself, except you went, wait.
Craig Mello doesn't live here.
Yeah, and oh wait, why are you doing two big articles back to back
Mm-hmm.
in the New York Times about Los Alamos Monitor?
Oh, I only saw one of them, I guess.
Yeah,
the one
there's
in the
two.
opinion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's two.
All right.
That's pretty big.
Yeah.
I'm not sure they've done that for any area. Oh, I'm sure the series. Yeah.
Lisa? Oh, sorry. Lisa?
I'm probably going to get some flack for this, but I would love to see an article on how the town spends its money, the county budget. Right now, sometimes we have 3.5 full-time people in social services division, and they're spending $2 million on net for the golf course.
But they won't be able to hear you in the video.
They're spending $2 million on a net for the golf course for balls that can't even go that far.
Mm-hmm.
And they're also spending the art and public places, 10% of every capital project, which goes to art and public places. I'm not sure. So they're buying a $55,000 painting for wash. I mean, things like that. When, we can't even get social services, we can't get mental health facilities, we can't get counseling, we can't get counseling for students, and just in areas.
You're not the only one who's worried about priorities, right?
To get into their budget.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes?
So this is not an article suggestion, but I'm just curious, why is the Los Alamos Daily Post so bad?
Oh, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there.
No, I just feel like in a forum like this, it should be, you talked about transparency, and I've actually asked reporters from the Daily Post, why don't you research them? And I got sort of a cagey answer, and I have my own theories, but I mean, that's the now newspaper of record, the one that we all read, and yet, like you said, it's just a collection of press releases.
I'm not, just no comment. Yeah.
And yet they earn quantities of money from advertising. You two get nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, we are now paying you. Oh, sorry. So, Daily Post gets quantities of money from advertising. So they could theoretically have more staff than just the two and maybe the photographer. Whereas Maura and you, Stephanie, are kind of on your own. I'm really glad we can pay you. I think we've
I'm going to work towards a new model that won't require a subscription or anything, but I'm working on something like that.
Yeah, I mean, our model right now is barely sustainable. I mean, we are not really paying ourselves. We're pretty pro bono. There's kind of loosely 4 of us, you could say, and it's really like a passion project, similar, yeah. And that's not really sustainable. You do have to get some money into the system to be sustainable. But I don't know what the business model at the Daily Post is, so I'm not gonna comment on that. But yeah, I will tell you that it's pretty tough. We're spread super thin. Yeah. Yes.
So I wonder how you find the effects of the Open Meetings Act and the IPRA Acts have what effects they've had on trying to write in this community. I'll preface my question with it's a nightmare for me to get anything from the county. You can get news releases from them, but you can't. I have written in another community, another county, and I could interview the chair of the county commission or any of the commissioners at any time, and they would talk to me about a topic that was coming up on the agenda or a topic that had come up during the county commission meeting. Here, nobody wants to talk to you. You have to go through the county PIO. The school district doesn't have a PIO that actually will answer questions. And then if you write one story that wasn't glowing about whatever's going on in any of the government,
You get shut out.
You get shut out completely. How do you propose to avoid this? You've already experienced it. We both have been locked out in different areas, and some of it is because of stories I've written.
Yeah, it's a very delicate balancing act. I've so far managed to keep relationships with entities in town for the most part without irritating people too much. I doubt that will last forever. But that's why I said that government should appreciate skeptical reporting, because without it, people trust you less. So you really do need to open your doors and talk to the press if you're part of the government. You can't just see it as being a bunch of mean people who are gossiping about you, right? If it's accurate and fair, you got to put up with it. You got to welcome it, you know. So I'm trying. It is difficult. It's a small town. People are very protective of their reputations. People have weirdly thin skins, I think, sometimes. You know, it's just a lot of work to try to stay in relationship with people. Yeah. So, yes.
This question is somewhat related to this discussion of people who don't like to hear bad news about themselves. And you said something that is a number of things, but one thing really rang a bell with me. You said everything has a benefit and a disadvantage. And I just think that's universal truth.
Yeah.
There's no car you can buy that has every advantage. And the discussions don't go that way. One person on one side of a party or organization will say, here's all the benefits, what are the disbenefits? There are none. The other side says, here's all the disbenefits, what are the benefits? There are none. So you decide who you like or trust. And how do you get a real reporting and discussion of benefits and disbenefits, pros and cons, good things, if you do this, you'll have these advantages, if you do the same thing, you'll have these advantages. And that's almost disappeared from the journalism media. I don't know if you're covering this, there's no answer, but
Yeah, it probably depends a little bit on the type of article. Some articles are really just like, here's what happened, and some articles are very analytical. But you're right, like, a good article would tell you the advantages and disadvantages of a policy, for sure. Right.
But at the same time, here's all of these benefits of what this guy said. And maybe a week later, or somebody say, oh, he's all wrong.
Right.
There's only benefits and good times. How do you get that give and take? And yes, even if you can't do, there's almost
Right.
nothing you can do.
There's nothing you can do that'll make everyone happy. Yeah.
That's only benefits
Right.
in those.
Right. No, go ahead, Maura.
May I address that?
Sure.
Quickly? So one of the problems is that people in the community no longer attend school board meetings or council meetings, for example. It used to be that you could go to a county council meeting with people with opinions on both sides of something that was on the agenda, and then you could talk in the hallway with them, or you could grab them, come outside. Can you tell me why you voted against that? Can you elaborate? Now there's nothing. And I don't even go now because it used to be a lot of times it would be Lisa's husband David and I sitting like the hecklers from the Muppet Show at the back of the room, and they would say, well, we only have 2 members of the public here. Do either of you have any comment? And things are not, it seems to me that in the 6 years that I've had my page, that we've gone further into the county staff presents it, and the county council listens, and very little is said to push back on anything, including the budget. Somebody said about the golf course, Lisa. There was no pushback on anything pretty much in the budget this year.
This is somewhat reflecting what goes on in the country, not just.
Yes, but I always thought that people were smarter here, more involved. There are so many organizations that are involved, and I can spend 2 nights working on a story and put it up, and I don't even get 1 like on it. Luckily, I can see how many people engaged in it, as in how many people read it. Otherwise, I would have given up a long time ago. But people will get more upset about a dog being out on the street with nobody looking after it than they will about the fact that there's so little money for social services.
Yeah.
So it's a tough community. You guys are a tough act.
Amy?
Can I just make a quick comment on that? And I think most people know that all of our boards and commissions meeting, our county council meetings, every single meeting within the county, unless they say it's a closed session, is open to the public and it's online as well. So anybody can attend.
Yeah. Actually, I was. Yeah.
Would you speak to how our local police department works against public safety and makes us less safer?
Well, I wrote an editorial on transparency. I have struggled to get information from the police. The February crash that happened on the truck route, it took 4 months to get even it was a 200-page report, right? But we probably could have had like a 3-page report, which we did have after the September 6th crash. It's all very hit or miss. And I have asked the police chief, point blank a couple of times for some information that he just won't tell me. And I get along really well with the police chief, but I do feel like there is a little bit of siloing there, like there is, everywhere. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like most of the institutions in town, and I'll just keep saying this, there's a siloing, there's a self-protection, there's, information is just, it's guarded, like it's secret, like we're a top secret town, right? Everything's so secret up here, and I feel like that's gotten a lot worse. When I was, a reporter in the 90s, it didn't feel like everything was so secret on this side of the bridge. And now it just feels like nobody wants to talk about anything. So I do feel like there's some reputation guarding, and yeah, definitely. Jean? And then Skip.
I'd like to follow up on this last question, and this might be directed at our council member, Helen, who's here, but the article I'd like to see, and it's really the outcome I'd like to see, is how our police department, or the department, police department, or whatever it's called,
On roads?
on roads.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
I
Yeah.
happily and sadly say that I was on the lab worker safety team
Mhm.
10 years ago, where the problem on the truck route was identified.
Mhm.
It was identified long before that,
Right.
too. And the work of the safety team resulted in the rumble strips
Right.
finally put in.
Mhm.
But the accident that was predicted perfectly
Yeah. Yep.
about that road. I personally believe West Road is another accident waiting to happen.
Mhm.
People are driving twice the speed limit past the ice rink.
Mhm.
And I just, okay, so what I saw in one interview, or maybe it was town council meeting, that the police chief said, will emphasize road safety over on the truck route during October. But after that, we have other things.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what he told me too. Yeah. Yep.
You know, we just still got to predict a couple of deaths every year.
Right.
That's
Cost of doing business, right?
That's what we're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I'd like to see.
Yeah.
I'd like the Department of Energy and the police chief to say what we're going to do.
Well, I'll tell you, I have tried to get the NNSA to talk to me, and that is a very slow-moving organization, and not super interested in talking to the media. So that has been pretty frustrating for me. I was telling her I did corner Ted Wyka at a meeting one time just so I could at least have a conversation with him. I did interview just recently Lanel's transportation chief on this topic, but of course they're so careful. They've got their PIO sitting right next to them, and they're very, very careful about what they say. And I'm trying in 12 different ways to get them to talk about, are you coordinating with the police? I try to get the police to tell me, are you coordinating with Lanel? And they're all just like, I think nobody wants to talk about it. Yeah. And Skip's been waiting.
Yes, actually, way back, it just comments about, how do you get to somebody saying one thing and later somebody saying something else. I would say the best thing that's happened in this town ever in all the 40 years we've been here, was it 50 years that we've been here, is the annual League of Women Voters election sheet.
Yeah.
Where questions are asked, both sides get a chance to answer. You monitor it somehow, I think, so they're not being crackpots and throwing insults at each other.
Right.
I don't know if there's other ways that could be applied elsewhere, but huge kudos to the media for that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
You can call me.
Yes.
I would like to follow up with Randy's question.
Mm-hmm.
I did just talk to Central Avenue, right, in downtown. And it's very dangerous with the legislative article on the pedestrians and the traffic going through, and the real threat to pedestrians based on the amount of pedestrians, the amount of traffic, the fact that people have to necessarily slow it down.
You're talking about Central Avenue?
Central
Yeah.
Avenue, downtown is just,
Yep.
the downtown, it's really, right by the house, by the post office,
Yep.
in that area.
Yeah, a few people have wound up under cars.
It's very.
Yep. Yeah.
It's a story.
I mean, this year, a few people have ended up under cars. Yeah. Yeah. Susie?
So thanks, Jean, for the invitation to comment. So I can tell you as one counselor, this is a super important topic for me. In the last couple weeks, thanks, Carolyn. I can say as one counselor, speaking just for myself, that this is a super important topic to me. I think it's a super important topic to county management. And I've had several meetings on this, informal, in the last several weeks. I had one this morning with members of the public, community leaders, I would say, just at 10 o'clock this morning. I hope you all know that this coming up Tuesday night, the 22nd, this topic is on the county council agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope you will all attend. There will be a presentation from the public works director at our request a few meetings ago, and from the police chief at my request to the county manager. And this will be a presentation, 2 presentations during a work session. It will be taking place at the fire station because voting is taking place at council chambers. Meeting starts at 6 p.m. I don't know where on the agenda it falls. Sorry about that. I won't know that till Friday. It's a work session, which means it's usually just presentations for us to listen. That we are going to have the opportunity to suspend rules so that if any of us would like to, and I say any of us, the counselors would like to then request action be taken by county staff or even propose an ordinance for further consideration, maybe a public hearing, that's all going to happen on Tuesday night. And that would just be the beginning. That doesn't mean, okay, it's a one chance, and it's our one chance to deal with traffic safety issues in our community. But I just want you all to know that. And I think Kyle has something to say.
Yeah, because I think the council changed the rule at some point so that public comment can't be made during the work session. Is that true? Yes.
I have my satchel. I could tell you I could read the county rules to you. I think that we said you can make public comment at the beginning of the meeting, at the end of the meeting, not following each agenda item.
Can I follow up on that? Because I did go to a council meeting and I did specifically vote on traffic related issue when there was one of the lab deputy directors there, and they wouldn't allow me to give any public comment. And they told me that what you just said, but in the olden days, public comment was allowed at every agenda item.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that this is an attempt to make our council meetings shorter because they used to go on until midnight, 1 a.m. not commonly. But they also used to have reporters at Parks and Rec meetings, planning and zoning meetings, transportation board meetings, every different board and commission.
That's the normal way a town should work, right? Is to have a reporter at every single one of those meetings.
And so I don't think that you can expect regular citizens to be going to all these meetings.
Mm-hmm.
That's what those boards and commissions are trying to do. But I do think it's a real shame that nobody reports on that, because back when the Monitor really was reporting on all those things, I think a lot of people felt much more informed.
Yeah.
And, that way when something like a big renovation of the golf course would happen, people would show up at the council to make comments because they had been reading about Parks and Rec board meetings and stuff. Now, like I was shocked when I went driving by on Diamond Drive and there's all this stuff sticking way up in the air because they have to drive their balls so far. And I just think, I had no idea they were going to be spending money on stuff like that. It seems kind of ridiculous to me. But anyway,
I'm just going to, I wanted to add something from a different perspective. We moved here in 1992, and my husband's a psychotherapist in town. And I will say, we were also good friends with Marvel Harrison, who was a doctor in psychology as well. And so much never got reported, much never got taken care of. There were issues at the lab if people came to seek therapy. Just because you're a physicist doesn't mean you might not have some issues or issues with your child. And so I think it got worse when Governor Martinez was in charge, because we lost a lot of people who were psychotherapists or therapists in town, and a lot of teachers, because I was a teacher, and counselors. It's like overwhelming, and I'm not saying that it didn't, but they would also talk about the fact that the drug use then was also well known, and even less was done now. Not that there's enough now either, but it just goes on and on until you want it right. Okay.
So, I started out, I wanted to ask you about Substack, but now I want to put in a plug for the league update, which is a newsletter that we put out once a month. June Fabrika Martin and Craig Martin have been reporting on
That's true.
every
Yeah.
council meeting for 2 years.
They do such a good job.
Also report on the P&Z meeting.
Yeah.
I attended, probably virtually, all those meetings about the golf course.
Yeah.
I'm an open space person. Originally, they were planning to take over some of the open space areas. And so there was this discussion about the nets. So those are up because the lawyers are concerned about litigation. And it was discussed, and it was agreed by the council that they didn't want to get sued for big boxes from being hit by a golf ball. So it's not as if this just suddenly appeared in the budget without any background.
I have to respond to that. Of course, there's litigation part, but you know what? If someone, I go on that course with my dad and my kids, and I've got a grandbaby, and it's not just the financial litigation exposure. It's what if someone really does get hurt, and I could also make the argument that it's golf and sport and the camaraderie it brings as a mental health benefit or benefit to mental health. I think loneliness, all kinds. It's so much more than just spewing out funds for golfers. So it's my point is there's so much more nuance, and I think there are a lot more things to consider on these important decisions. Right. But
So I just want to say that it is a little less past one, and it's definitely you're fine staying, and anyone here who needs to leave, that's fine, but oftentimes you go beyond that. I'll bring it to you.
Or I can give her mine.
And what the league puts together is really wonderful.
Yeah.
It's just that a lot of people don't get it. And
I actually reached out to the league, to Craig, and said we should collaborate with Boomtown, and they were considering it, and then I never heard back. But it does seem like they need a platform, right? Something that's a little bigger than the newsletter.
It was discussed at the annual meeting last one, and it was difficult because one of the news outlets is not interested in collaboration. So we had discussed coming up with some way to avoid duplication of reporting, so that if one person did the transportation board, that somebody else could go to the Parks and Rec. But also, you have to remember there are recordings of all those meetings, and you can get online and watch them. So it's kind of unfair to put it all on, well, we used to have reporters at all those meetings. You could not physically attend all those meetings and sleep and have a life.
No, you have to.
Tell
Yeah,
you that, right? The recording.
you have to have a proper newsroom.
The chair of those boards and commissions publish a report of what happened at the meeting.
Yeah,
Not all of them.
No, not all of them, and it's very recent. That only
Yeah.
started this year.
And I just do a follow-up. We're getting a lot of tourists now. To the question I asked about pedestrians along a couple of Central and they don't really know our town, and they wander around. Nothing's that I know of has been written about the impact or the happiness we have or whatever about the amazing increase of visitors to our town. And I know, and then when there's a science fair or something over by the lodge, people are going back. We need to kind of tie in what's happening to the center of our town. And I haven't seen a big absolute tremendous increase in tourism.
Yeah, no, that would be a great topic. I was on the tourism implementation task force, I guess just before the pandemic. So yeah. Were you on that with me? Yeah. So yeah, no, that would be a great topic. It would fit right into our theme. Anyone else? Jill? And Ginger after you, Ginger.
Just a quick recommendation. We do have approximately 8,000 plus families, so 16 to 24,000 people, whether they're coming up here just during the day or they're coming up here on the weekend or whatever. And when I have visited with a couple of folks that are new to this community, young people just out of graduate school, most of them from all over the United States and this planet, it's very hard for them to figure out how to engage up here. They're fish out of water moment, and I think it would be really great to do some sort of an article. I mean, they're all online, they all read everything, but to do some sort of an article that says, if you want to get engaged, here's some things. Read these newsletters, come to these events, get on these committees, because I got too much gray hair to do all of this all the time. I mean, I'm on a lot of things up here, and I moved here in March, but I know how to do this. I've been doing this for decades. I think it would, to start to pull some of these quieter, younger, full of energy voices that really have different priorities. They're relatively new. They bring some very interesting insights to this community. We got to figure out how to empower them.
I'll hand it over to you, Ginger, in just a sec, but that just reminded me that I had thought at the very beginning of this that it would be interesting to go to the tub and just go around from young person to young person, right? And because I do think those people are often kind of disengaged from, they're not going to public meetings. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all right. Ginger?
That wouldn't take long to write.
Yeah. 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 Okay. Yeah, I heard about that. That reminds me. We are planning to unveil a guest essay. We don't take letters to the editor because then we really would never sleep. But we're planning to do a guest essay feature where people, Dr. Bratton, for example, will tell us what they can bring their own expertise to Boomtown, because that's one way to spread ourselves a little bit thinner, I guess. I don't know. To way to bring in some more collaboration, right? Wider. Thank you.
You don't want thinner.
Yeah. No, I was like, that's not the right word. Yeah. So Dr. Bratton will be, addressing some of that. But you're right. That is the whole. When I think about it, I feel totally overwhelmed because it's such a big topic, but it's an important topic for this town for sure. Yes.
So, I recently came across you do a Google search and the first thing that comes up is an AI overview. I recently came across an occasion where the AI overview was 100% wrong factually. And what do you think the effect of AI is on the current reporting situation, and what do you think it may become in the future, and how can you keep it under control?
Yeah. So I think AI is kind of like the printing press and the stirrup and bronze. I think it's a technology, and it's revolutionary. It's totally revolutionary, and it can be used for good, and it can be used for ill. Most of the time when people say, what do you think about AI, there's only really one answer they're looking for, which is, don't ever use it, it's bad, go away, no AI, bad. And I don't actually, we do use AI. I use it, for example, to help prepare interview questions. And it's incredibly useful for transcripts, which is a hugely time-consuming process. I mean, for every hour I spend interviewing, it was taking me 4 hours to get a transcript out of that. And AI could really help with that. But I always have a note in there, always go back to the original recording for every quote. You always have to be the human in the loop when it comes to AI. You can't let it replace you, but it certainly can be an assistant, right? It can be like an intern. That's the way I think of it. It's like a free intern for some things. It's good, if I'm doing research on teens and substance use, I might look at a 200-page paper. I could spend like 15 hours on that, or I can get a summary of it. And then when I realize what the important points are in the paper, I can go back to the paper and find those points and read them. But if I am trying to read through 200 pages, it's just, there's only one of me, again. And the way I think of it is everything I do is in service to the reader, right? So if I can make myself more efficient so I can get accurate information out to the readers, then that's all to the good. So I guess that's my feeling on AI. It's here to stay, and you're either in the saddle or you're under the hooves. It's just,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, yep, yes.
Could you spend a few minutes just talking about Substack? Because the
Yes.
way I found out about articles was to get an email, but then I also get some other stuff via Substack, and I'm confused by it.
Yeah, well, I'm a little confused by it too, to be honest. And I don't see her. I was hoping Sam McRae might. She's supposed to show up, and she's really our Substack gal. But so I actually, in anticipation of this, I brought this up. This is what every landing page on Substack looks like. It's all very, very similar. So when you click on an article, generally speaking, it'll just take you right to the article. But if you go to the home page, it'll prompt you to subscribe. And so this is the subscription page. And you can either type in your little email and then hit subscribe, and it'll take you to the next page. Or you can click on no thanks, and it'll just take you straight to the article. If you click on subscribe, let's see, where did I put it? There it is. Then you get this next page, and this is Timothy Snyder. I don't know, do you guys know who Timothy Snyder is? I'm just going to show you real quick. Good, because he's tyranny guy. I actually he wrote this book on tyranny. This is his Substack. I'm just going to read you my favorite of his 20 lessons. 11, investigate. Figure things out for yourself. Spend more time with long articles. Subsidize investigative journalism. So this is his Substack. Again, every Substack looks pretty much the same. So ours looks like this too. And you have a choice of signing up for free, which is the one all the way over to the right. And in a lot of Substacks, like Timothy Snyder's, that means you're not really going to get very much. On ours, we have pretty much everything open to the free to the public. And if you do subscribe, the other three options are various subscription tiers. You're subsidizing the free readers, right? You're helping keep it free for everybody else. And we have, like them, they're all the same, monthly, annual, or founding, but you get to set your own price for those. So you pick your subscription plan, and you go from there. And then the articles go straight into your email inbox, so you don't have to go to a website to find them. They just show up. I hit send, and boom, it's right there in your email inbox. So that's kind of nice because you don't have to go out and hunt for it. And then if you are a free subscriber, you have the option, after you've checked it out and you've realized how awesome we are, you can upgrade to paid, and it's that button on the upper right. It's always there, and you can upgrade to paid. And then you can also be a founding member, and you get merch, but mostly you just know that you're, preserving the fourth estate. So does that answer your questions?
So a new article will appear. That means I'll get an email.
It'll come in your email inbox.
So I don't need to go to like a Substack app on the phone.
You do not. Substack has an app, and it's a pretty nice app. I actually always forget to use it myself, but it's a pretty nice, seamless app, and then you have all of your subscriptions right there. But it also shows up right in your email inbox, too.
So if you are a subscriber and you click on that article, can you read all the articles, or can you read that article plus just anything else?
It probably depends on the Substack, but on ours you can read all the articles. Okay. Yeah. Some of them, like Timothy Snyder's, are a little more locked down. So,
Thanks. In my experience, is once you kind of get on Substack, it'll start developing an algorithm, and every now and then you'll get an email kind of saying, you might be interested in this, you might be interested in that. So if you're a Boomtown person and you're a Timothy Snyder person, it might recommend
Joyce Vance.
The Atlantic. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
Yes.
I wanted to say thank you for starting Boomtown. I've learned a lot, especially about the McMillan accident, and the Flemings are neighbors, and that filled in a lot of things about the accident that you were in. And my question is, what are you looking to do with Boomtown? What are your goals?
Well, my ultimate goal, the thing that would reward me the most, is to see more transparency, decision making amongst our leaders. So that would really, like, policy changes would, like, really get me. That's very exciting for me, you know. So I think, you know, what I was talking about here about the Fourth Estate, I really want the community to be more engaged and to ask more of their leaders, and to start talking to each other more and get out of our silos. So if I start seeing that happen, that would be thrilling for me. And we're, you know, what are we going to do? We keep experimenting. We have a new thing we are calling BoomGov, which is like a council agenda preview. And ideally, I would write about what's actually happening at the meetings, but I just have not had the energy to do that. There's just a lot to cover, and I'm only one person. So, you know, I am doing my best, but, you know, maybe someday we will make enough money, get a grant that we can hire another reporter. That would be great. But it's hard because if you live in Los Alamos and you're a good writer, probably the lab has scooped you up, right? So I don't know how, like, the lab they scoop up everybody, right? It's a pretty tough environment.
What do you think of Think New Mexico?
I don't know much about it. What do you think of Think New Mexico? It's okay. Okay, yeah. Well,
They do a lot of, you know, in-depth and exposés, and this is what New Mexico is doing, this is how we want them to fix it.
yeah. Okay.
So nonpartisan. Yeah.
All right. I'll have to.
They get a lot of good stuff going on.
I can, you know, their reports are easily available.
Mm-hmm.
They focus on like one issue at a time.
For several now. Yeah, they've got staff. They've really expanded and grown.
They're really great.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else have any questions? Hetty?
Is there a journalism class at the high school? Could we? No. Oh, too bad. Because I was going to say maybe some of those young people would be interested in interning with you, and you could get public support to underwrite them. Yeah.
Can I ask that?
Sure.
So everybody says, so Maura, why don't you get kids from the journalism class from the high school? I have to check myself on every word that I publish. Having an intern that's going to write, if they went to a meeting and covered it, I would have to go back and listen to the meeting to make sure that they weren't misquoting somebody or that they had missed something really important that happened. And so it would be twice as much work, and I would probably have to give them some kind of remuneration, and I don't take in any money at my page yet. So that's the answer to the, you know, it sounds great, but it would actually be, it would give you another half-time position to operate by yourself.
We have talked about interns and kind of arrived at that conclusion that it would be maybe cost us more time than it would save us. So it is, yeah, that's a tough one.
A quick query about Substack.
Yeah.
I have Heather Cox Richardson on Substack.
Yeah.
And are you on the same Substack?
Yeah.
Do I have to get separate subscriptions or do I get one subscription and that makes me get all of them?
No. You have to subscribe to each Substack separately. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't, as far as I know, there's no like suite, you know.
Will it tell us those of us who do subscribe to Boomtown, will it tell us when our subscription is up? Because I don't remember when.
I think so. Like, it's been 11 months, so we're still figuring out ourselves. But I believe that it's annual. If you're an annual member, it should give you the opportunity to re-up, or it may automatically do it. I'm not sure. And it depends, you know. Does your credit card run out? Like mine just did. So, any other questions? All right. Thanks, everyone.